I remember the afternoon it started. The way the light came through the window at an angle that made everything feel slower, softer, like the world had decided to pause just long enough for me to notice something I'd been missing all along. It was October, I think. The kind of day where the sun still had warmth in it, but the air carried the first real edge of cold. The living room was filled with that golden, dusty light that only happens in the late afternoon, the kind that makes you feel like you're inside a memory, even while it's still happening. I was sitting on the floor, back against the couch, scrolling through something I can't even remember now. Probably nothing important. Ezra was sprawled across the couch above me, one arm draped over the back, the other holding his phone at an angle that suggested he wasn't really looking at it. We'd been like that for a while, existing in the same space without needing to fill it with words. That was how it usually was with us. Comfortable. Easy. The kind of friendship where silence didn't feel like absence. Then something happened. I don't even know what it was. Something small. A video, maybe, or a thought that struck me as absurd. I laughed. Not a polite chuckle or a quiet exhale through my nose, but a real laugh, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and unguarded. The kind I didn't let out very often. It surprised me how loud it was, how it filled the room and bounced off the walls like it didn't belong to me at all. Before I could even catch my breath, something hit me in the side of the head. Soft but sudden. A pillow. I turned, still half laughing, and saw Ezra sitting up now, his expression caught between annoyance and something else I couldn't quite name. He groaned, loud and exaggerated, and shook his head like I'd just committed some kind of crime. "Your laugh is so damn annoying," he said. The words landed heavier than the pillow. I felt my chest tighten, the laughter dying in my throat, like someone had reached in and turned off a switch. I looked at him, trying to read his face, trying to figure out if he was joking or if I'd somehow crossed a line I didn't know existed. My laugh had always been something I was self-conscious about. Too loud, too uncontrolled, too much. I'd spent years learning how to keep it quiet, how to swallow it down before it could escape. And now here it was thrown back at me by the one person I thought I didn't have to hide it from. But then I saw it. The smirk. Small, barely there, tugging at the corner of his mouth like he was trying to hold it back, but couldn't quite manage. His eyes were different too. Not annoyed. Not mocking. Something softer. Something that made my pulse quicken in a way I didn't understand. He leaned back against the couch, stretching his arms above his head, and the smirk widened just a fraction. His gaze stayed on me, steady and unblinking, and I felt pinned under it, like he could see something I'd been trying to keep hidden. "Do it again," he said. I blinked. The words didn't make sense. I opened my mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. "What?" "Laugh," he said. His voice was quieter now, stripped of the teasing edge. It sounded almost like a request. "I like how it feels." I stared at him. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air thicker. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the distant sound of a car passing outside, the faint creak of the couch as Ezra shifted his weight. Everything else fell away, narrowed down to just the two of us in that golden afternoon light. I didn't laugh. I couldn't. My throat felt tight, my chest heavy with something I couldn't name. The way he was looking at me made it impossible to respond the way I normally would, with a joke or a deflection or a shrug that would let the moment pass without weight. This moment didn't want to pass. It sat between us, thick and warm and strange, and I didn't know what to do with it. Ezra's smirk faded, but his eyes stayed on mine. He looked almost serious now, which was rare for him. Ezra was the kind of person who turned everything into a joke, who hid behind sarcasm and charm like they were armor. But right now, in this moment, the armor was gone. He looked like he meant it, like the words had cost him something to say. I tried to make sense of it. "Your laugh is annoying. Do it again. I like how it feels." The contradiction sat in my chest like a knot I couldn't untangle. How could something be annoying and wanted at the same time? How could he tell me to stop and then ask me to continue in the span of seconds? I wanted to ask him what he meant, but the words wouldn't come. My voice felt stuck somewhere between my lungs and my mouth, trapped by the weight of the moment. So I just sat there, staring at him, trying to understand what had just shifted between us. Ezra broke the silence first. He always did. He sat up straighter, running a hand through his hair. and the smirk returned, but it was different now. Softer, less like a shield and more like an apology. "Forget it," he said, but his voice didn't sound like someone who wanted me to forget. It sounded like someone who'd said too much and was trying to take it back before it meant something. But already meant something. I just didn't know what yet. The rest of the afternoon passed in a kind of haze. We went back to our phones, back to the easy silence we'd been in before, but it didn't feel the same. I was hyper-aware of him now, of the way he shifted on the couch, the way his gaze would flicker toward me, and then away, like he was checking to see if I was still there. I felt like something had been opened that couldn't be closed again, a door I hadn't even known existed. I thought about his words over and over, turning them in my mind like stones. "I like how it feels." What did that mean? How could a laugh feel like anything to someone else? It was just sound, just air pushed through vocal cords, just a reflex. But the way he'd said it made it sound like more. Like it was something he needed, something he wanted to hold on to. And the truth was I wanted to understand. I wanted to know what it felt like for him when I laughed. I wanted to know why he'd thrown that pillow, why he'd called it annoying, why he'd asked me to do it again. I wanted to know what was happening between us, why the air felt different now, why my chest felt tight every time I looked at him. But I didn't ask. Not then. I just sat there in the fading light, listening to the silence, feeling the weight of something I couldn't yet name settling over me like a blanket. And I knew, even then, that this was the beginning of something. I just didn't know what. I should tell you about who we were then, before that afternoon changed everything. Before the smirk and the pillow and the words that wouldn't leave my head. I was 22, a philosophy major at a state university I'd chosen mostly because it was affordable and far enough from home to feel like freedom. I spent most of my time in the library or in our apartment, reading books that asked questions I didn't have answers to. Kant, Kierkegaard, Sartre. I liked the weight of big ideas, the way they created distance between me and the messier parts of being alive. Feelings were harder to manage than arguments. Emotions didn't follow logic, so I kept mine buried, tucked behind careful words and measured responses. I was good at that, at being steady, and not letting anyone see too much. My laugh was the exception. When it came without warning, breaking through the walls I'd built like water through a crack in concrete. I hated that about it. Hated how uncontrolled it was, how loud, how it made me feel exposed. So I learned to keep it quiet, to swallow it before it could fully form. Most people never heard it all. Ezra was different. Ezra heard everything. He was 23, a year older than me, though sometimes it felt like more. He had the kind of presence that filled a room without effort. Magnetic, people called him. Charismatic. He studied business, though I wasn't sure he cared about it. He seemed to move through life with a kind of restless energy, like he was always looking for the next thing, the next thrill, the next moment that would make him feel something. He dated casually, mostly people he met at parties or through friends. It never lasted long. He'd show up with someone new every few weeks, all smiles and easy charm. And then a month later they'd be gone, and he'd shrug it off like it didn't matter. I think the longest relationship he'd had lasted maybe 2 months. He told me once that he got bored easily, that people wanted things from him he didn't know how to give. He said it like a joke, but I heard the edge underneath. The way it sounded more like a confession than a punchline. We'd been roommates for 1.5 years by then. We met through a housing board posting, 2 strangers looking to split rent on a 2-bedroom apartment near campus. I'd expected awkwardness, the kind of polite distance roommates maintain when they don't really know each other. But Ezra didn't do distance. Within a week, he'd pulled me into his orbit. Late-night conversations about nothing and everything. Lazy afternoons where we'd exist in the same space without needing to perform. He had a way of making me feel seen without demanding anything in return. We balanced each other. I was steady where he was reckless, quiet where he was loud. I thought about things too much. He didn't think about them enough. It worked. We worked. The friendship felt easy in a way nothing else in my life did. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't notice other things too. The way his presence shifted the air in a room. The way his smile could make my chest feel tight. The way I found myself watching him sometimes when he wasn't looking, memorizing the shape of his hands, the angle of his jaw, the way his hair fell across his forehead when he forgot to push it back. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Ezra was my friend, my best friend, the person I felt safest with. And he was straight, or at least I thought he was. He dated women. He talked about women. He never once gave me a reason to think otherwise. So I kept those thoughts locked away, buried under layers of rationalization and restraint. I was good at that, and not wanting things I couldn't have, at keeping my feelings contained where they couldn't hurt anyone, especially not me. But that afternoon, when he threw the pillow and called my laugh annoying, when he smirked and told me to do it again, something shifted. The careful walls I'd built started to crack, because the way he looked at me in that moment didn't feel like friendship. It felt like something else, something deeper, something that made my pulse quicken and my breath catch and my carefully constructed restraint start to crumble. I didn't know what to do with that, with the possibility that maybe, just maybe, he felt something too, that the teasing wasn't just teasing, that the smirk meant more than I'd let myself believe. So I did what I always did. I pulled back. I retreated into my head, into the safety of analysis and distance. I told myself I was reading too much into it, that it was just a moment, nothing more, that I was projecting my own feelings onto him because I wanted so badly for them to be mutual. But deep down, underneath all the rationalization, I knew something had changed. The words hung between us now, impossible to ignore. Your laugh is annoying. Do it again. I like how it feels. And I couldn't stop thinking about what it meant that he wanted to hear it, that he needed to feel it, that maybe for the first time, I wasn't the only one holding something back. The teasing didn't stop after that afternoon. If anything, it intensified, but it felt different now. Sharper, more deliberate, like Ezra had found something he wanted to keep poking at, testing the edges of, seeing how far he could push before something gave. He started paying attention to my laugh in a way he never had before. I noticed it in small moments. The way his gaze would snap to me the second I let out even the smallest chuckle. The way he'd lean forward slightly, like he was trying to get closer to the sound. The way his expression would shift, softening around the edges, the usual smirk giving way to something that looked almost hungry. It made me self-conscious in a way I hadn't been before. Suddenly, I was aware of every laugh, every small sound of amusement that escaped me. I found myself holding back more, swallowing the impulse before it could fully form. But that only seemed to make Ezra more determined. He started making jokes just to draw it out of me. Stupid jokes, the kind that shouldn't have been funny, but somehow were. He'd say something ridiculous while we were cooking dinner or watching a movie, his timing perfect, his delivery casual, and I'd feel the laugh building in my chest before I could stop it. And every time it escaped, he'd get this look on his face. Satisfaction mixed with something softer. Something I couldn't quite name. One evening, about a week after the pillow incident, we were sitting on the couch watching some mindless video compilation on his laptop. Cats doing stupid things, people falling in ways that shouldn't have been funny but were. I wasn't really paying attention. My mind was elsewhere, caught up in an essay I'd been trying to write about existential freedom and the weight of choice. And something on the screen caught me off guard. A cat misjudging a jump spectacularly, tumbling in a way that was so perfectly timed it looked choreographed. I burst out laughing before I could stop myself. The sound filled the small space between us, loud and unrestrained, exactly the kind of laugh I'd been trying to keep contained. I expected Ezra to tease me again, to roll his eyes, or throw something at me, or make some comment about volume control. But he didn't. Instead, he went quiet. I felt his stillness beside me, the way his whole body seemed to pause. When I glanced over, he wasn't looking at the screen anymore. He was looking at me. His expression was different, softer than usual, but also more intense, like he was memorizing something. His eyes held mine for a moment that stretched longer than it should have, and then he leaned back against the couch, his gaze still fixed on my face. There it is, he murmured. My breath caught. The laughter died in my throat, replaced by something heavier. What? He smiled, but it wasn't his usual cocky grin. This was smaller, more genuine, almost tentative, the sound I like. The words settled between us like a confession. I felt my pulse quicken, my chest tightening with the weight of what he just said. It wasn't teasing this time. There was no sarcasm, no deflection, no easy joke to soften the edges. Just honesty, raw and unguarded, hanging in the air between us. I didn't know how to respond. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what was happening, trying to understand what he meant by that. The sound I like. Not a sound. Not the sound someone makes. The sound I like. Possessive. Personal. Like my laugh belonged to him somehow. I wanted to ask him what he meant, but the words wouldn't come. So I just sat there, staring at him, feeling the air grow thick with everything we weren't saying. Ezra broke, eye contact first, glancing back at the screen like nothing had happened. But I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was set, like he was fighting to keep his expression neutral. Like he'd revealed more than he meant to and was trying to take it back without actually taking it back. We finished the video in silence. Or maybe we didn't finish it. I don't remember. All I remember is the weight of his words pressing against my chest, making it hard to breathe, making it impossible to think about anything else. And I realized, sitting there in the dim light of the laptop screen, that this wasn't about annoyance at all. It had never been about annoyance. The pillow, the teasing, the way he kept drawing my laugh out of me like he was mining for something precious. It was about wanting to hear it, needing to feel it. It was about claiming something that felt uniquely his. I didn't understand why. I didn't know what it meant for him, or for us, or for the careful friendship we'd built. But I understood that something had shifted irrevocably, that we'd crossed some invisible line, and there was no going back to the easy simplicity of before. The rest of the evening passed in a fog. We said goodnight the way we always did, casual and brief, but I felt the charge in the air between us. Felt the weight of unspoken things pressing down on both of us. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about his voice, the sound I like, and I couldn't stop wondering what it meant that he wanted it, that he needed to hear it, that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't imagining the way everything between us was changing. The days that followed felt heavier somehow, like the air in our apartment had thickened, charged with something neither of us could name or acknowledge. Everything looked the same on the surface. We still made breakfast together in the mornings, still fell into our usual rhythms of classes and homework and lazy evenings on the couch. But underneath, something fundamental had shifted. I started noticing the way Ezra watched me. Not the casual glances of a roommate or friend, but something more deliberate, more focused. His eyes would catch on me in moments I wasn't expecting. When I was reading at the kitchen table, when I was washing dishes, when I was just existing in the space we shared. And it wasn't my face he was watching exactly. It was something else. He was waiting for something. Waiting for the moment when my guard would drop and the laughter would slip free. It made me hyper-aware of every sound I made, every small chuckle, every exhale of amusement, every moment when something struck me as funny. I felt observed in a way that should have been uncomfortable, but somehow wasn't. It was intimate. That was the word that kept coming back to me. The way he paid attention felt intimate, like he was learning something about me that no one else had ever cared to notice. Ezra started making more jokes. Not his usual casual humor, but calculated attempts to coax the laugh out of me. He'd lean close while we were cooking, whispering something absurd directly into my ear, his breath warm against my skin. He'd wait until I was mid-sip of coffee before saying something ridiculous, trying to catch me off guard. He'd reference inside jokes at the most unexpected moments, his timing perfect, his delivery designed specifically to break through my defenses. And it worked. Despite my efforts to maintain control, to keep that part of myself contained, he found ways past my walls. Each time I laughed, I'd catch the look on his face. Satisfaction mixed with something deeper, something that looked almost like relief, like he'd been holding his breath waiting for it. The touching increased too, small things that might have seemed innocent to anyone else. His hand on my shoulder when he passed behind me, his knee pressed against mine when we sat together on the couch, his fingers brushing mine when he handed me something. Each touch lingered a fraction longer than necessary, long enough for me to notice, long enough for my skin to remember the warmth of his even after he pulled away. I didn't know what to do with any of it. With the attention, the touches, the way he seemed to be orbiting closer to me day by day. Part of me wanted to pull back, to recreate the safe distance we'd had before. But a larger part of me, the part I'd been trying so hard to ignore, wanted to lean into it, to see where this was going, to understand what he wanted from me. It was a Thursday night, I remember, about 2 weeks after the pillow incident. We were in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner. Ezra was washing dishes, and I was drying, falling into the easy rhythm we'd developed over months of shared domesticity. He said something about one of his professors, some complaint about a project deadline, and I made a comment back. Something dry, a little sarcastic, not particularly funny. But Ezra laughed, really laughed, and then, as if the sound of his own laughter reminded him of something, he glanced over at me with that look again. That focused, hungry look that made my chest feel tight. He leaned closer, his shoulder bumping mine, and said something so quietly I almost didn't hear it. Something about how the professor looked like a sad walrus. The image was so absurd, so perfectly timed, that I couldn't stop the laugh that burst out of me. Ezra stopped washing dishes. His hands went still in the soapy water. He turned to face me fully, and the expression on his face made my breath catch. He looked almost vulnerable, raw in a way I'd never seen him before. "Why do you keep doing that?" I asked. My voice came out quieter than I intended, barely above a whisper. He blinked, like he was coming back from somewhere far away. "Doing what?" "Making me laugh. Trying to. Like it's some kind of mission." For a moment, I thought he might deflect. Make a joke, shrug it off, retreat behind his usual armor of sarcasm. But instead, he held my gaze. His hands came out of the water, dripping soap onto the floor between us. "Because it feels different when it's me who makes you laugh," he said. His voice was soft, almost hesitant, like he was confessing something he'd been holding back for too long. The words hit me like a physical thing. I felt them in my chest, in my throat, in the space behind my ribs where my heart was suddenly beating too fast. "Different how?" I managed to ask. He shook his head slightly, a small smile tugging at his lips. But it wasn't his usual smirk. It was something more genuine, more uncertain, like you're giving me something no one else gets. And suddenly I understood. The teasing, the attention, the way he kept drawing my laugh out like he was pulling on a thread. It wasn't about the sound itself. It was about possession, about claiming something that felt uniquely his, about matching more than anyone else in a way that couldn't be measured or quantified or explained. I didn't know what to say to that, how to respond to the vulnerability in his voice, the truth in his eyes. So I just stood there, dish towel in hand, feeling the weight of everything between us growing heavier with each passing second. I couldn't let it go. His words stayed with me through the rest of that evening, circling in my mind like something I needed to decode. Like you're giving me something no one else gets. I turned the phrase over and over, examining it from every angle, try to understand what he really meant, what he was really asking for. We finished cleaning the kitchen in silence. Not the comfortable kind we'd always shared, but something heavier, charged. I could feel the weight of unspoken things pressing down on both of us, making every movement feel significant. When our hands accidentally brushed, reaching for the same dish, I felt the contact like electricity. Later, we ended up on the couch the way we always did. Ezra had his laptop open, pretending to work on something. I had a book in my hands, Camus, but I hadn't turned a page in 20 minutes. The words blurred together, meaningless. All I could think about was him, about the way he'd looked at me in the kitchen, about the vulnerability in his voice when he'd said it felt different. I needed to understand. I needed him to explain what this was, what was happening between us, because I couldn't keep existing in this liminal space of not knowing. The uncertainty was eating at me, making it impossible to focus on anything else. "So what does it feel like?" I asked, breaking the silence. Ezra's fingers paused on the keyboard. He didn't look up right away. I watched the side of his face, the way his jaw tensed, the way he seemed to be weighing whether to answer honestly or deflect. "What?" he said, but his voice was quiet. He knew exactly what I was asking. "When I laugh, when you make me laugh, you said it feels different. So tell me, what does it feel like?" He closed his laptop slowly, deliberately, and set it aside. For a long moment, he just sat there, staring at his hands. I could see him struggling with something, wrestling with words he didn't know how to say. Ezra was always so confident, so self-assured, but right now he looked uncertain, almost afraid. Finally, he turned to face me. His eyes met mine, and I saw something in them I'd never seen before. Something raw and unguarded that made my chest ache. Like I matter more than anyone else, he whispered. The words landed between us with the weight of a confession. I felt them sink into me, settling somewhere deep. This wasn't about friendship. This wasn't about casual roommate dynamics, or shared jokes, or comfortable companionship. This was about something else entirely. Something he'd been hiding behind teasing and smirks and carefully constructed distance. I couldn't breathe. The air felt too thick, too warm. My heart was beating so hard I was sure he could hear it. Why? I asked. My voice came out rougher than I intended. Why does it matter so much? He shook his head slightly, a small self-deprecating smile tugging at his lips. I don't know. I've been trying to figure that out for weeks now. Maybe longer. His gaze dropped to his hands again, his fingers twisting together. I just know that every time you laugh, really laugh, not the polite ones you give everyone else, I feel like I've won something. Like you're letting me see a part of you that you keep hidden from the world. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was even quieter. And I'm greedy for it. For that sound. For the way it makes me feel like I'm the only person in the room. Like nothing else exists except you and me in that moment. I felt something crack open inside me. All the careful walls I'd built, all the rationalization and restraint and denial, it all came crumbling down in the face of his honesty. Because he was describing exactly what I'd been feeling but hadn't known how to name. The way his attention made me feel seen. The way his presence filled spaces in me I hadn't known were empty. The laughter had been an excuse, a cover, a way for him to reach for something he couldn't ask for directly. What he wanted, what he'd been circling around for weeks, was intimacy, connection, the right to matter to someone in a way that transcended friendship. But Jonah, he continued, and there was something almost desperate in his voice now. I know I don't have any right to this, to wanting this from you. We're friends. We're just supposed to be friends. And I don't want to mess that up. I don't want to make things weird or uncomfortable or... I couldn't let him finish that thought. Couldn't let him retreat back behind his walls after he'd just torn his open. It's not weird, I said. My voice was steadier than I felt. And you're not the only one who feels it. His eyes snapped to mine, wide with something that looked like hope mixed with disbelief. What? I swallowed hard, forcing myself to be as honest as he'd been. Every time you lean close, every time you touch me, every time you look at me like I'm the only thing that matters. I feel it too. I've been feeling it for longer than I want to admit. The silence that followed was different from before. Not heavy with unsaid things, but full with the weight of truth finally spoken. We sat there, looking at each other, and I could see everything shifting between us in real time. The friendship we'd built was transforming into something else. Something neither of us had planned, but both of us had been moving toward without realizing it. Ezra reached out slowly, tentatively, and his hand found mine. His fingers laced through mine with a certainty that contradicted the uncertainty in his eyes. So what do we do now? He asked, and I realized I didn't have an answer. But for the first time in weeks, I wasn't afraid of not knowing. We didn't talk about it after that night. Not directly, but something had been unlocked between us, and there was no putting it back. The apartment felt different now. Smaller. Every room held the memory of our conversation, the weight of what we'd admitted hanging in the air like smoke. Ezra still made me laugh. But now when he did, there was no pretense, no deflection. He'd watch me with open hunger, no longer trying to hide what he wanted. And I'd let him watch, no longer afraid of what it meant that I wanted him to. The touching became more frequent, more deliberate. His hand would find the small of my back when he passed behind me. His fingers would brush the nape of my neck when he leaned over my shoulder to look at something. We'd sit close enough that our thighs pressed together, and neither of us would move away. Each contact felt like a question neither of us knew how to answer with words. Days passed like that. A week. We existed in this strange in-between space, knowing what we felt, but not knowing how to move forward. Like we were both standing at the edge of something vast and terrifying, waiting for the other to jump first. It was a Friday night when everything finally shifted. We'd ordered takeout, Thai food from the place down the street, and we're eating on the couch with some movie playing that neither of us was really watching. I don't even remember what it was. Something action-heavy with explosions and one-liners that were supposed to be clever but weren't. Then something happened on screen. Something absurd, a stunt that defied all logic and physics. The kind of thing that shouldn't have been funny, but somehow was. I laughed. Really laughed. The sound came out of me unguarded, genuine, the kind of laugh I'd stop trying to hold back around him. But this time, Ezra didn't just watch. He didn't lean back with that satisfied smirk. He didn't say anything about liking the sound. Instead, he moved. It happened so fast, I didn't have time to think. One moment we were sitting side by side, and the next he was leaning in, his hand coming up to cup the side of my face, his lips finding mine mid-breath, swallowing the tail into my laughter. The world stopped. Everything narrowed down to the point of contact. The warmth of his mouth, the gentle pressure of his hand against my jaw, the way my heart seemed to stutter and then race. I could taste the sweetness of the Thai tea he'd been drinking, could feel the slight tremor in his fingers where they touched my skin. For a fraction of a second, I froze. My mind went blank with shock, with disbelief, with the overwhelming reality of something I'd wanted but never let myself believe could happen. But then instinct took over and I was kissing him back, my hands finding their way to his shirt, pulling him closer. The kiss was tentative at first, questioning, like we were both still afraid of breaking whatever fragile thing existed between us. But then something shifted, deepened. His other hand came up to thread through my hair, and I made a sound low in my throat that I'd never made before. Something between a sigh and a surrender. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. His forehead rested against mine, his eyes closed, his expression caught somewhere between relief and wonder. I could feel the rapid beat of his pulse where my fingers pressed against his neck. He opened his eyes, and the look in them made my chest ache. Vulnerable and fierce at the same time. Like he'd just given me something precious and was terrified I might hand it back. "Do it again," he whispered. His voice was rough, raw with emotion. "Please." At first I didn't understand what he meant. My mind was still reeling from the kiss, from the reality of his mouth on mine, from the way everything I'd been holding back had finally broken free. Then I realized he wanted to hear it, the laugh. Even now, especially now, something about that broke something else open inside me. The fact that even in this moment, after crossing the line we'd been dancing around for weeks, what he wanted most was still the same thing. To hear me laugh. To feel like he mattered more than anyone else. So I did. I laughed. Softer than before, breathier, but genuine. It came out mixed with something that might have been a sob, might have been relief, might have been joy. I didn't know. I just knew it was real. And Ezra was there, pulling me closer, his arms wrapping around me like he was trying to hold me together, or maybe hold us together. His face pressed into the curve of my neck, and I felt him smile against my skin. Again, he murmured, so quiet I almost didn't hear it. "Just keep giving me that." So I did. I let the laughter bubble up, let it fill the space between us, let it wash away all the fear and uncertainty and careful distance we'd maintained. And with each sound, I felt Ezra's arms tighten around me, felt him breathe me in like I was something vital, something he needed to survive. We stayed like that for a long time, wrapped around each other on the couch, the movie still playing forgotten in the background, the world outside reduced to nothing. Just us. Just this. Just the sound of my laughter and the certainty of his arms and the knowledge that everything had changed and there was no going back. And I didn't want to go back. Not anymore. It's been weeks now since that Friday night. Since the kiss that changed everything. Since the moment I stopped holding back and let him hear all the parts of me I'd spent years keeping quiet. The apartment sounds different these days. That's the first thing I notice when I think about how much has shifted. There's more laughter now. Mine mostly. It comes easier, more freely, rising up without the weight of self-consciousness I used to carry. I don't swallow it down anymore. Don't cut it short before it can fully form. I just let it out. Let it fill the space we share because I know now what it means to him, what it means to us. Ezra still watches me when I laugh. But the hunger in his gaze has softened into something gentler, something that looks more like contentment than need. Like he's no longer afraid the sound will disappear if he doesn't chase it. Like he knows now that it's his, that I'm his in ways that don't require constant confirmation. We've fallen into new rhythms, small intimacies that have woven themselves into the fabric of our days. His hand finding mine across the kitchen table while we eat breakfast. The way he kisses my temple when he passes behind me while I'm reading. How we've stopped pretending we need separate spaces on the couch, instead gravitating to each other like magnets, my head on his shoulder or his arm around my waist. The word annoying never comes up anymore. I think about that sometimes, about how it was never really about annoyance at all. It was about not knowing how to ask for what he wanted, about needing an excuse to pay attention, to notice, to claim something he thought he had no right to. Now he doesn't need excuses. This morning, I was making coffee, and he came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, pulling me back against his chest. He rested his chin on my shoulder and just stood there, breathing me in. I could feel the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against my back. "What are you doing?" I asked, smiling into the steam rising from my mug. "Just this," he murmured. "Just holding you." And that was enough. That's what I'm learning. That sometimes the most profound moments are the quietest ones. The ones where nothing needs to be said because everything is already understood. Last week, we told his sister about us. She came over for dinner, and I watched Ezra navigate the conversation with a nervousness I'd never seen in him before. He kept glancing at me like he needed reassurance, like he was afraid of what her reaction might mean. When he finally said it, when he told her we were together, she just smiled, looked between us, and said she'd been wondering when we'd figure it out. Apparently, we hadn't been as subtle as we thought. We still have our separate bedrooms. We haven't talked about changing that yet. But most nights, one of us ends up in the other's room anyway. Last night, it was him and mine, sprawled across my bed while I tried to finish a chapter for class. He kept making comments about the text, deliberately misinterpreting Sartre in ways that were so absurd I couldn't help but laugh. Each time I did, he'd look up at me with that expression, the one I've come to recognize as purely his. Satisfaction mixed with affection, mixed with something deeper that I'm learning to call love, even though we haven't said the word out loud yet. When I finally closed the book and turned off the light, he pulled me close, my back to his chest, his arm draped over my waist. His lips found the space behind my ear, pressing a soft kiss there. "Tell me something," he whispered into the darkness. "Like what?" "Anything. I just want to hear your voice." So I told him about the essay I'd been reading, about Sartre's idea of radical freedom and the weight of choice, about how terrifying it is to accept that we're responsible for creating meaning in our own lives. I talked until my voice grew soft and drowsy, until the words started to blur together. And then, because I was allowed to now, I laughed quietly at something that struck me as absurd about the whole philosophy. The way we complicate simple things. The way we think ourselves in circles, trying to understand what it means to be human. I felt Ezra's smile against my skin, felt his arm tighten around me. "There it is," he murmured, so quiet I almost didn't hear it. That's my favorite sound in the world, and I realized something in that moment. Something important. The laughter had been the catalyst, but it was never really about the laughter. It was about being seen, about being wanted, about matching to someone in a way that couldn't be measured or explained or rationalized. Ezra had taught me that, had shown me that it was okay to be loud sometimes, to take up space, to let myself be heard without apology. I used to think my laugh was too much, that it made me vulnerable, exposed, easy to hurt. But Ezra heard it differently. He heard joy. He heard authenticity. He heard me. And now, lying here in the dark with his arms around me and his breath warm against my neck, I understand what he meant all those weeks ago when he said it felt like I was giving him something no one else got. Because I was. I am. I'm giving him the parts of myself I kept hidden from everyone else. The unguarded moments. The unfiltered reactions. The sound of genuine joy. And he's given me the same. The vulnerability beneath the smirk. The tenderness beneath the teasing. The certain knowledge that I matter more than anyone else. The apartment is quiet now, except for his breathing, deep and steady, telling me he's drifted off to sleep. But I'm still awake, thinking about how strange it is that something as simple as laughter could lead to this. To love. To home. I close my eyes and smile into the darkness. And I let myself laugh one more time, soft and gentle, just for him, just for us.